Hey everybody, it is the ASP.NET Community Stand-Up. It's funny, when you do something every week, all it takes is to not do it for 1 week and it completely messes up your flow. Wouldn't you say, Damien?
Yeah, absolutely. It took us about 20 minutes to get this thing working this morning.
Yep. Sorry that we did not do it for a couple of weeks there. I think it was 2 weeks. I hope it wasn't 3.
I think it might have been 3.
Yeesh.
Travel.
Sorry.
Yeah.
We were really, really working hard to get things ready for the Build conference, which went famously.
It did. Went very well, actually.
Yeah, I'll do a blog post soon, but basically, from an ASP.NET team perspective, selfishly, because we are the ASP.NET team, we've got a couple of really great talks. Damien's talk was great. Scott Hunter's talk was great. I thought my talk went very well. So we feel we've got 2 solid hours of really great content around ASP.NET 5 that you will be able to check out. And it's up on Channel 9 now, in fact, so you can go hunt that stuff down.
Yep, very much so. And then there are people at Ignite this week. There's like 22,000 people or something at Ignite. That conference.
22,000.
Yes, there's over 20,000 attendees.
Why are we not there?
Because, well, you and I aren't there because we've been traveling too much, but we have members of the team there.
Yes, we do, actually. We've got a bunch of people over there. So check out Pranav is there, Brady is there, Mads is there.
Yeah. Taylor is there, Andrew is there.
Taylor and Andrew are working the booth. Check them out. Check them out. Go say hello to our friends.
Indeed, do that.
So what have we shipped this last week? Like, people were still working and writing code while we were running around in San Francisco, were they not?
Oh my God, yeah. So as we've been talking about on the stand-up for a while, we've been beta 4 shipped, right? I mean, let's just cut to it. Beta 4 shipped last week. That's in the box in VS 2015 RC. And the team is working on beta 5. They've been working on beta 5 for a few weeks now because beta 4 was locked a while ago. We also shipped VS Code, the greater we, Microsoft. And we've seen fantastic response to VS Code, lots of feedback on user voice, and just sort of anecdotal stuff on Twitter and whatnot. And the VS Code supports ASP.NET 5 and Node.js development scenarios right now. Plus, it has syntax highlighting for like a bazillion other languages, but Node and ASP.NET 5 are kind of the main line. I can code, I can debug, those type of things. So that's really cool. And then, so beta 5 we're doing right now. We've been doing a bunch of planning to try and figure out sort of how much work we have left before we can say, hey, we're done, and we can ship an RC with a go live license and all that sort of stuff. That work is ongoing. By my latest sync up yesterday, I think we now have the rough outline of kind of the work that's left, and now we kind of have to shop that round, get it reviewed, and make some hard decisions based on feedback on timelines and things like that to figure out what goes in and what goes out. I'm very, very, very. I want to make sure that we really do it right and that we do a 1.0 that people are really happy with, obviously. So we'll see where that lands, and we'll communicate sort of that backlog a little more openly once we get some more buy-in from management and that type of stuff. What else is going on? I also recorded a video, a sort of introduction to tag helpers, which I tweeted around yesterday. It's on Channel 9 as well. It's part of those Connect, Learn or something series. I don't know what it's called. Connect something. But it's like 8 or 9 minutes. It's an introduction to tag helpers that shows, how to use a tag helper, what they are, and then also very quickly how to write one. So if people are just looking for the really quick bite-sized thing, we're getting really good response to those types of videos, actually. And I was talking to some people at Build. And I'm thinking that it seems that people would really like to have like a really big gallery of, say, 5-10 minute videos which just do one thing. It's like, hey, what is the project.lock.json file? What's that all about? Here's a 5-minute video that explains it and why you should care about it. Or any possible question that you could ask about ASP.NET 5 or DNX. People, it seemed very responsive to the idea of having just a very short video to explain that. So again, that's an idea we're shopping around here, trying to figure out how we could sort of farm that work out. And ramp up on that. Simultaneously, the docs site is getting more and more stuff on it now. So at docs.asp.net, which is backed by our GitHub repository, because all the docs are open source. They're built on top of the Read the Docs platform. That's getting new articles almost daily right now. So we have a bunch of people working on that, which is fantastic to see. And any feedback we have on those is always, greatly appreciated. What else is going on? You and I are hacking around with Raspberry Pis, where I got Windows 10 IoT installed on my Raspberry Pi 2 yesterday, as I believe you did too.
I did, sitting right here.
So
How
we're
do you
now.
feel about our chances of getting ASP.NET to work on it?
It's very early at this stage. Like, we have a number of avenues I think that we could approach to getting that going. We're talking to the .NET team right now about like what it would take. I mean, there's all priorities and all sorts of stuff to figure out. Like at the moment, it's literally just a bunch of us are excited, and so we're hacking.
Mm-hmm.
This is not like some official promise or anything, but I think with a little bit of hacking, a few of us might be able to at least get something running. We have a couple of approaches. Like, so, you can write a C++ console app that runs on an IoT Windows device, and you can set it up as a startup task so that it'll just run every time you boot it, or you can remote PowerShell in and run it. So that looks like it might be an approach. We could, try and get an ARM version of the core CLR compiled, or maybe we could steal it from the UAP platform, because I believe there's one that's deployed when you're developing. There's one that's deployed as part of the app. So we could try and reappropriate that and really hack something together. Or we could look at the approach of just ignoring the dnx.exe completely and try and getting the ASP.NET hosting layer called into directly from the UAP sort of, or once the .NET's already booted as such.
Right, but there's like the UAP background task is a thing. They have a way to bootstrap things and host things, but then there's also on an ARM device, on a low-powered ARM device like that, it may not necessarily be the right appropriate place for like a jitter and
well, to be clear, UAP on IoT is like .NET native. Like when you deploy, it all gets compiled down. But apparently, while you're developing, with VS attached and all sort of stuff, it actually bundles a version of the core CLR and stuff along with your app. But again, very early days. We're just sort of talking about it right now. No promises whatsoever, but it's exciting, and people are kind of interested in this idea that we could get ASP.NET 5 and maybe even DNX and a bunch of other stuff running on top of a Windows 10 IoT device like a Raspberry Pi 2. So, having fun with that. What else is going on? Obviously, as part of Beta 5, we've still got a bunch of work to do.
Here's a question. A lot of people confused about Visual Studio Code. They'll install it and they'll make a program.cs, or they'll take their old ASP.NET 2 application and open it, and they'll go, "This sucks."
Yes. So part of that, and that's as much as our fault as anyone who's trying that's fault. That's not an unreasonable assumption to make. We had Visual Studio for so many years, and we released a thing called Visual Studio Code, and you just kind of assume you can load stuff into it. And we said, hey, it supports .NET. People have to remember that the parts of .NET that are going cross-platform are strictly the .NET Core pieces, or this thing called .NET Core and the stuff that sits on top of that. So ASP.NET 5, which uses the DNX and the Project JSON sort of project system, rather than an MS Build based project system, that all works on .NET Core. Hence, that will work on a Mac and Linux. Hence, that will work in VS Code. SLN files and CS proj files and VB proj files and MVC projects that use special project GUIDs in their CS proj files to load specific VS project systems. None of that will work in VS Code. Like VS Code, to be clear, is not Visual Studio in any real meaningful way, in other than name. It is built on top of Electron, which is previously called Atom Shell, and the editor itself is written in TypeScript. It is not the .NET or native Visual Studio shell running in any way cross-platform.
Right. So it has Roslyn doing the IntelliSense for it via OmniSharp for the C# side, and it has TypeScript and a custom service for the TypeScript stuff. So it can only do what Roslyn and OmniSharp know how to do, and that's ASP.NET right now, and then a little bit on ASP.NET proper.
Yeah, and when we say a little bit, we really mean a little bit, because ASP.NET proper runs on Windows and really only.
And another way to phrase it is there's a single file IntelliSense.
Right.
Make an HTML file and type dot, and HTML, SAS, CSS.
Yep.
Multi-file IntelliSense, where it kind of gets a sense about what's going on by looking at multiple files and includes and stuff, and then proper project and then solution style IntelliSense.
And OmniSharp understands the concept of projects and solutions as they are defined in the ASP.NET 5 sort of object model, not in the previous object model. So, it understands global JSON and project JSON and those things because it's hosting the design time host, that special version of the DNX built specifically for use in IDEs. So that's why that works. That's why, your old Web Forms app or your MVC3 app, you won't get much help for that in VS Code. So we've got a bunch of questions coming in. I don't know if they're just talking to each other or whether they're things that we can answer. Brad is complimenting my XUnit sticker. I have a few stickers on my thing here. I think I have XUnit, I have the Windows sticker, I have OmniSharp.
How does unit testing working right now on ASP.NET?
Infinitely better than it did last week because the XUnit guys have shipped 2.1 beta 1, I think is what they're calling it. I can't remember. But there's now a version of XUnit on the NuGet.org feed that supports, has a new runner specifically for DNX. In fact, it's actually called xunit.runner.dnx. And it'll work with any DNX-based application and sort of the patterns of having a command called test and that type of stuff in VS. So that works quite well now. Someone's asking, does ASP.NET have the concept of debug and release build configurations? Yes, so you can configure build configurations. I mean, build configurations are just flags that you send to the compiler. That's really all they are. So, hey, this is a debug build, this is a release build. Those two particular names have certain connotations that the compiler understands, as well as you being able to if-def around those as symbols. You can always create your own symbols. I can create a symbol called Damien, and then if-def around Damien and send that flag to the compiler to include that code. We support all those things in Project JSON and DNX. They are different to our target framework symbols, like we say hash if DNX 451. Or other things like environment. Some people have been conflating our environmental support, like are you in development, staging, or production, with build configurations. They are orthogonal, they're not directly related to each other, but I can understand why someone might want to have the two correlated in some way, but they happen at different times. Like one happens at compile time, release or build is a compilation instruction. The environment stuff is kind of an ambient string that represents where I'm currently running. And there's a number of different ways you can set it. You can get it from the environment. You can just stick it in the configuration system by name value key. You can just write code that does it. It's really just an opaque string that you can set and then use to determine where you're running. So Brad says that version of XUnit is 2.1 beta 2. It's the one that you want. What are the prerequisites to reference an ASP.NET 5 project from a classical CS proj? We don't support that right now. If you try and do that, in 2015 RC, I think it'll show up and then you'll get an error. We will work on doing that for RTM though. Right now you can do it the other way. You can reference a CS proj from an ASP.NET 5 project, but not the other way around. But we will fix that. So if the hash if debug currently works when I perform a deploy to Azure, or other if doesn't, assuming Azure is using release. Remember, again, it's not a case of Azure using release or debug. That is an instruction you give to the compiler when you build your application. You have to tell it, can you please do a debug compilation or a release compilation, because it's just a flag or a name that you send to the compiler. If that's part of some other process, like a deployment, then that deployment pipeline might be doing the build step for you, in which case it may be making a decision about whether it says debug or release based on a UI or a config file or something like that. But it is not an environmental thing. It's not, this machine always runs debug releases. You have to actually compile it with the debug flag or the release flag. What else? I think that's all the questions I can see right now. The other ones that just seem to be talking to each other about formatting or something.
No worries.
That's all good. So beta 5, what was I going to say? There's a couple of things going on. We did a bit of package renaming. We had some inconsistency between using the word contracts versus interfaces versus abstractions versus core to all mean the same thing. So we've renamed all of our packages across all the things to make sure that those names always mean the same thing everywhere. So that won't break VS if you try and use the nightly builds now and you're trying to use beta 5. You just need to make sure that everything is referencing beta 5. Where most people get into trouble when they try and switch from like NuGet.org packages to the MyGet packages is that something somewhere is still referencing or pulling in older packages. So you have what we call it crossing the streams, right? Don't cross the streams. If you have beta 4 and beta 5 running in the same app, bad things will happen. You'll generally get compilation errors, warnings that types exist in more than one assembly at the same time, you need to make sure that everything is referencing either beta 4 or beta 5. And you can do that by using in Solution Explorer that little in the tree in the Solution Explorer under references. Just drill down in there and make sure everything says beta 5 and then some build number. But the errors are getting much better now. So even if you do get an error, it should be quite informative as to what the problem is. Other than that, we're working through features and bugs. We seem to be getting a lot more community participation in terms of bugs and discussion on the repos now, which is fantastic to see. So please keep that up. Some people are asking on Twitter, where's the conversation work for ASP.NET 5 on Raspberry Pi happening? Would love to play along. It's happening right here and on our IM windows and on Twitter. Yesterday,
literally, we could have secret meetings. I'm
you
sure
and
we should have some secret meetings.
Yeah, we were texting each other yesterday, photos as we got it working.
Right, but you can download. Go to my blog right now. I put up how to get universal apps running on Windows 10 on Raspberry Pi now. You can start poking around, learn about what's there. You can install and run universal apps now, and we'll have a public conversation about how we can get ASP.NET working and what you would want to do with it. For example, I think an interesting question to ask would be, do we want websites running on Raspberry Pi, or do we just want web APIs? Is there a difference? Like, if we get MVC running, do we mean Razor and the whole thing, or do you just want JSON web services? What do you think?
I mean, at that point, it's kind of, once you get one running, everything technically is kind of possible after that. Like, to get one running, you kind of do the same things. But yeah,
there's requirements for identity and stuff. The more security-based stuff. Would we be able to get the full everything? Do you think running on a Raspberry Pi?
There's always going to be. We're always going to be limited by the platform APIs that we can call into.
Right.
For things like crypto and those things. But my understanding is the Windows 10 IoT core, which is built on the Windows 1 core, has most of the things that we would want. They already have Node running inside UAP and those type of things. So they're obviously thinking about those sort of server-based scenarios. And indeed, the dashboard you get when you install Windows 10 on Raspberry Pi is a web server. So they're already serving something somehow.
Does the fact that they're using Node mean that it's possible to do ASP.NET? Like, we could never be in a situation where it is technically not possible. It may be super difficult, but is it?
Nothing's impossible.
Nothing's impossible. Okay, just checking.
Yeah. I mean, it all comes down to, there's the UAP or the UWP platform, the Universal Windows Program platform, Universal Window, whatever they call it, UWP. That has an app model and a sandbox, right? And you build stuff and you package it up and it gets deployed over, and that supports JavaScript and .NET and C++. And then they have a lower level, which is all native, and you can write drivers and you can write C++ console apps. And at that point, you're just literally calling, Win32 or whatever the APIs are to call into Windows. And so, it has sockets, it has all those normal subsystems that you'd expect. We can rebuild a lot. But ultimately, to run ASP.NET 5 the way people expect, you need a running .NET CLR, right? To do MVC, you need to do RefEmit. You need, we do runtime generation with reflection in order to discover stuff and emit types that can then be satisfied with routing and make it fast and all those type of things. And to do those type of things, we need to have a CLR built for ARM, targeting Raspberry Pi architecture that we can, then boot from a native C++ exe like dnx.exe. My understanding is all those pieces in some form exist somewhere.
Right.
We've had an ARM core CLR before because phones run ARM, and we had a Silverlight-based CLR running on phones. So we have that. We've done that work before. It's a case of priorities and which team has to build what and all that type of stuff. But because a lot of it's open source now, the community is free just to clone the core CLR and try building it, for whatever purposes that they want. And that's kind of what we were going to do as a side thing right now, before we can figure out where it actually fits into the overall, scheme of priorities.
Right. And we do have priorities, like we have to get globalization, internationalization, and instrumentation, and documentation, and all the other Asians working. So while I think we're all deeply interested in getting it to work, it's probably not in the top 10 things to get to work right now. No,
and to be really clear, like for the .NET team is super busy getting Core CLR up to snuff on Mac and Linux, right? They've just shipped the first preview of that last week, and we now need to get it up to the same level as Core CLR on Windows, and then fast forward trying to get it out to a 1.0 on all 3 platforms as quickly as we can at the best quality we can. Adding a whole other architecture into that, like ARM, which introduces new challenges, and certain programming patterns don't work on ARM the way they do on x86, and it's not just the CoreCLR, but every library on top of that. Like, do we have stuff in some of our code that's assuming x86 behaviors that would cause bugs? Like, there's a whole flow-on effect of moving to ARM, or supporting ARM, I should say. But we're keen, and it's early days, and people seem to be excited, and that's good. I love it when the community is excited about the prospect of something working. I look forward to the next step, which is when the community, someone turns around and says, "Hey, look, I got Hello World working. I spent, was up till 4 a.m. last night and I hacked it together." So I'm kind of excited about what might go. Can Damon explain memoization? No, you can look it up on Wikipedia.
So mean, man. So mean.
It's like I said in the talk. It's basically the method returns a previously determined result at subsequent times you call it. Anything else in here that's interesting? How's the status of CI for the GitHub repositories? I'm seeing the Travis ones just break due to that one mono bug, and AppBay runs into timeout during test. Yeah, we continue to work through a bunch of issues with getting the GitHub repos building on those CI systems so that we've got good visibility into our story on Linux and whatnot. We do care about that. We do have people working on it. So yeah, look to watch those go green hopefully in the near future. Just scrolling down here, see if there's any other questions. Don't see any others that I haven't answered yet. Looks pretty good.
Cool.
All right.
It's a pretty lovely time. I have to say though that right now I'm just overwhelmed with the amount of email that we received in the last week and a half of that build.
Well, that's what tends to happen when you're out of the office for a couple of weeks. Yeah.
Yes, I'm going to do what a proper PM at Microsoft does right now and spend the day deleting email.
Control-A, delete is the easy way to do it. If it's really important, I'll email you again.
I know, and the thing is, I'm the guy that says that.
But you can't do it, can you?
Really hard. It's really hard. I'm more of a like delete, think kind of a person.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. That's fair enough.
All right.
All right.
Yay, we're all done. Dramatic zoom.
Oh, on that point, someone at Build actually said to me how much they enjoy this format, and that now whenever their remote workers dial in, they always end their meetings with a dramatic zoom out on their conference.
Are you serious?
I am totally serious. It's
become a thing.
It's become a shtick. It's a meme. It's a real world meme. Here we go.
All right, here we go. Dramatic zoom. We need to get some sound for this. Goodbye, everybody.
Yeah.